Civil Rights Responsibilities of Virginia Cooperative Extension Volunteers. This training should be one part of your overall Extension volunteer orientation and training. If you have any questions about any of the content in this presentation, please discuss with a paid Extension faculty or staff member. The objectives of this training are, first, to help you as a VCE volunteer to understand the legal basis for our civil rights responsibilities. Second, to discuss some key civil rights terms and concepts that apply to you as a volunteer. And third, to review the civil rights responsibilities you have as an Extension volunteer. Current civil rights requirements are based on a series of laws passed after the great efforts of many people during the 1960s and 70s. This legislation created a framework to ensure that people who were historically discriminated against received equal opportunities under the law. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was one of the first civil rights laws passed in the country, and it is central to our work in Extension. This law requires that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be otherwise subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Our efforts in Virginia Cooperative Extension as recipients of federal funding are subject to this very basic civil rights law and in meeting specific obligations of non-discrimination and equal opportunity associated with USDA civil rights rules and regulations. Other civil rights laws that apply to our Extension work include Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination in employment practices, and Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which prohibited discrimination due to a person's gender. The Americans with Disabilities Act that passed in 1990 prohibited discrimination due to a person having a disability. And the Civil Rights Act of 1991 added clarification to some of the previous laws. As employees of Virginia Tech, we are also subject to its policies on discrimination and harassment. Virginia Tech's anti-discrimination and harassment prevention policy states, Virginia Tech does not tolerate discrimination or harassment on the basis of age, color, disability, gender, national origin, political affiliation, race, religion, sexual orientation, or veteran status. Such behavior is inconsistent with the university's commitments to excellence and to a community in which mutual respect is a core value as articulated in the Virginia Tech Principles of Community. The prohibition against discrimination and harassment applies to all levels and areas of university operations and programs and includes students, administrators, faculty, staff, volunteers, vendors, and contractors. The principles of inclusion and diversity are core values in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, including the teaching, extension, and research missions. We respect differences in people, ideas, programs, and partnerships. For Virginia Cooperative Extension and Virginia Agriculture Experiment Station, these values guide the development and delivery of our educational programming and research efforts. Civil rights legislation simply reinforces those values. Not only do our civil rights laws affect Extension in the development and implementation of Extension programs, but it also affects us as an employer. Extension must consider all employment issues according to non-discrimination guidelines. Virginia Cooperative Extension's civil rights goals are to expand access to educational programs to people from traditionally underrepresented groups and also to promote non-discrimination and value differences among staff, clients, volunteers, and partners. In order to meet those goals, all of us in the Extension system have responsibilities. That includes agents and specialists, family nutrition program area coordinators, program and administrative assistants, volunteers and VCE-sponsored volunteer groups, faculty and staff at 4-H centers, at our Ag Research Extension centers, on campus and in unit offices, as well as administrators at all levels. It does not matter if an employee's funding is entirely from local sources or from state or federal sources. If that employee works in Virginia Cooperative Extension, they are subject to the same civil rights expectations as everyone else. However, for Virginia Cooperative Extension, it is the extension agents that primarily work with the public that have the greatest responsibilities for meeting our civil rights expectations. Other faculty educators, such as state specialists and 4-H center program directors, also work with the public, but due to the nature of their jobs, their responsibilities can be slightly different. For example, specialists often do not work with volunteers or may not have advisory committees. Extension program assistants and volunteers are also involved in education delivery and thus have much of the same responsibilities as agents and specialists, but they work under the direction of faculty educators. In fact, a volunteer's understanding of the significance of and compliance with our civil rights responsibilities starts when a volunteer completes and signs a volunteer enrollment form. In that document, the volunteer indicates that they understand that Virginia Cooperative Extension programs and employment are open to all, regardless of age, color, disability, gender, national origin, political affiliation, race, religion, sexual orientation, or veteran status. The volunteer also agrees to abide by all policies and procedures of VCE. So this training module is designed to help you understand the policies and procedures that relate to our civil rights responsibilities. Now that you have a better understanding of the basis for Extension's civil rights responsibilities, you need to be familiar with some key civil rights terms and concepts. These terms and concepts will help you understand your specific responsibilities as a VCE volunteer. The first term is equal opportunity. Equal opportunity is a situation in which people have the same opportunities in life as other people, without being treated in an unfair way because of any personal characteristics such as race, age, gender, religion, etc. For Virginia Cooperative Extension, this equates to our core value that employment and educational programs and services are open to all. It is directly tied to the Title VI and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. What it means for you as a volunteer is that in your dealings with the public, we cannot deny anyone access to extension programs, services, or membership in clubs based on any personal characteristics they have, such as race, gender, religion, political beliefs, sexual orientation, and other differences that have been mentioned earlier. Another less well-known term is parity. Sometimes it is referred to as balanced participation or balanced membership. An extension program is in parity when the participation of people in minority groups in that program reflects the proportionate representation of those groups in the population of the potential audience. In other words, if 5% of the participants in a county master gardener program are African American, and if 5% of your county population is African American, your program is at 100% parity. For extension purposes, a program is considered in compliance when participation has reached 80% of parity. You can calculate parity by taking the percent minority representation in your program divided by the percent representation in your county's population multiplied by 100. So if a county-wide 4-H club has 10% Hispanic participants and your county has a 20% Hispanic population, your 4-H club is at 50% of parity. Because the level of parity is less than 80%, efforts will need to be made to raise the parity percentage in order to be in compliance with civil rights laws. determination if your club or volunteer-led programming efforts are in parity, and taking efforts to get your group in parity will be done in cooperation with your extension agent or program assistant. Who makes up your potential audience? Your potential audience is persons or groups in a defined geographic area. Usually in extension, we look at geographic areas as the county or the city level, but the area could also be defined at a multi-county, district, or state level. U.S. Census data is most often used to determine the potential audience makeup. Your extension agent or program assistant should work with you to help you determine the demographic makeup of the potential audience for your volunteer-led program efforts. Civil rights laws require that we use all reasonable efforts to achieve balanced participation and membership according to the potential audience. However, since parity cannot be guaranteed in advance of programming, it is important to make all reasonable efforts in all of our programming efforts. What constitutes all reasonable efforts? All reasonable efforts are a combination of actions, such as the use of mass media and personal visits, that are designed to communicate to all persons that VCE program participation and VCE-sponsored club membership are open and that all are welcome and encouraged to become members or participate in educational programs. Your extension agent or program assistant will work with you to be sure your VCE club or program is taking the appropriate efforts to meet the all reasonable efforts standard. An important part of your civil rights responsibilities as a volunteer is collecting contacts. A contact occurs anytime extension educational information is shared with the public. Contacts can occur face-to-face at workshops or club meetings, over the phone, by email, through newsletters and extension publications. Examples of when you would collect contacts as a volunteer include attendance at a 4-H club meeting, clientele participation in a workshop offered by Master Naturalist, or individuals assisted by a Master Gardener over a phone hotline, and a Master Food Volunteer helping a client learn how to can vegetables. Contacts is not enrollment information. Instead, a contact occurs anytime educational information is passed on from a paid or unpaid staff member, such as a volunteer, to a client. Contact reports on their own tell us very little. It is when we compare our actual audience data documented as contacts to our potential audience data that we can determine if our all reasonable efforts are paying off, at least when it comes to race and gender. Contacts data is used to make adjustments in our program marketing and notification efforts in order to bring our efforts into parity. There are resources available to help you understand how to correctly collect contacts. These tools include this fact sheet, but the best way to learn about contacts collection and reporting is probably through a conversation with your extension agent or program assistant. You will need to understand what qualifies as a direct contact and an indirect contact. You'll want to know the difference between business-related contacts and educational contacts. You want to know who is required to report contacts, how often, and the specific guidelines and policies that pertain to contacts. Because contacts collection and reporting is so central to our civil rights compliance expectations, it is critical that everyone, including volunteers, understands and takes this responsibility seriously. There are a number of tools that have been created to collect contacts. Some are designed as collection tools for the observer, in other words, the faculty, staff, or volunteer collecting the data. The Observer Collected Contacts Log for paid and volunteer staff is an example of this type of tool that you could use at a workshop or club meeting. Another tool that is good for use in an office setting is the Support Staff Contacts Log. It allows you to collect contacts that are made by phone or email, as well as walk-in clients. Other tools are designed for self-reporting of the needed data by the clientele, such as the attendance log. Your extension professional can provide you with these tools and help explain how they are used. The contacts you collect need to be reported to your extension agent or program assistant on a regular basis, ideally every month, but consult with them to determine what they prefer. They will add your contacts to those of other volunteers and their own and report them through our online VCE contacts reporting system. Contacts, besides being extremely useful to assess how we are doing in making our programs accessible to everyone, also provides valuable data that is provided to local, state, and federal stakeholders. We are required to document for each specific VCE-sponsored organization or club whether they have balanced membership, and if not, the all reasonable efforts that the organization or club took to try to be in parity. Publication 490-156, called Civil Rights Compliance of VCE Volunteer Organizations and Clubs, is used to document the parity status of VCE groups and the all reasonable efforts that were taken by those groups. This form needs to be completed annually by each VCE-sponsored group or club. If a club or organization is not in parity, then documentation should be provided along with the completed form as evidence of the all reasonable efforts that were taken to work towards balanced membership. Agents and other staff should work with volunteers to meet this expectation. Most often, when you want to publicize extension programs or club meetings via flyers, newsletters, news releases, etc., you will do so with the assistance of the faculty and staff in your extension office. However, if you create documents on your own that are used with the public for your extension effort or club, you need to know there are civil rights responsibilities that apply to these documents. Often referred to as indicia statements, they are better described as non-discrimination statements, since a component of our civil rights compliance requirements is to notify the public that extension is open to all, including individuals with disabilities. Thus, we are required to apply our non-discrimination language to publications, announcements, newsletters, news releases, letterheads, documents of all sorts, essentially any documents targeted to the public. This requirement to use the indicia statements applies to all extension faculty and staff and volunteers. There are two distinct civil rights indicia statements. The first is called the Equal Opportunity or EEO statement, shown here. It states, Virginia Cooperative Extension programs and employment are open to all, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, religion, age, disability, political beliefs, sexual orientation, or marital or family status. An equal opportunity affirmative action employer. The second indicia statement is the ADA statement. It must be used in all methods of promotion, including written, verbal, and electronic, for workshops, events, seminars, classes, organizational or club meetings. There is a slightly different ADA statement that is used when publicizing extension services. You should always consult with your agent, program assistant, or administrative support staff person about the use of these statements when developing extension documents that are to be distributed to the public. In review, the objectives of this module were to make you better informed about your civil rights compliance responsibilities as a VCE volunteer. The key points are: federal civil rights laws form the basis for extension's civil rights responsibilities. Virginia Tech, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Virginia State University, and VCE all consider inclusion and appreciation of differences as core values. All paid and non-paid extension staff have civil rights responsibilities. Our programs and services are non-discriminatory. VCE-sponsored groups and clubs must strive for balanced membership or parity. The test for parity drives our all reasonable efforts. Contacts collection is a critical means of determining if our programs are non-discriminatory, and non-discrimination statements must accompany all public documents. Please consult with your extension agent or other extension professional if you have any questions about this information.